3 o'clock. It is December 14th, 2012. I'll call to order the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. And could we have a roll call?
City of Carmel by the Sea, Councilmember Beach. Here. City of Delray Oaks, Mayor Edelin.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. Here. City of Marina, Councilmember Brown. City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge. Here. Monterey County Chair Potter.
Here.
Monterey County Supervisor Calcagno. Monterey County Supervisor Parker. City of Pacific Grove, Mayor Camp. Here. City of Salinas, Mayor Donahue. City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass. Here. City of Seaside, Mayor Rubio. Here. City of Seaside, Councilmember Oglesby. Here. Chair Potter, you have a quorum.
And please note Supervisor Parker has arrived. All right, we are going to go to closed session. We're going to closed session for 4 items, 3 of them being litigation involving Keep Fort Ord Wild, and the 4th, perhaps a presentation on the City of Marina versus Fort Ord Reuse Authority. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to any of these items before we go to closed? I don't see anyone. We'll go to closed session and we'll be back at 3:30. Early 3:30, and we can commence with the balance of today's business. The board did meet in closed session on 4 matters of existing litigation, 3 cases involving Keep Fort Ord Wild, 1 case involving the City of Marina. The board received a status report on all of those cases, and no reportable action was taken. That noted, why don't, if we could, why don't we have the Pledge of Allegiance? If you join me, please. Please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Acknowledgements, announcements, and correspondences. First, I want to thank Vice Chair Edelin for standing in my absence for the last month plus as I took care of my mother's health issues on the East Coast. Jerry, thank you very much. I've been informed you did a very good job, and I never expected anything less out of you, but didn't mean to pass the chairmanship on so prematurely. Thank you. I'd also like to note that we do have, I believe, 3 items that have some urgency associated with them.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to have 3 of the resolutions read into the record and have the executive officer actually present the resolutions during this meeting today.
All right. Why don't we proceed with that?
Yes. Chair Potter, members of the board, I want to enter into read this first resolution of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority, a resolution of appreciation to Mayor Felix Bachhoffner. It is hereby resolved by the Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board of Directors that whereas Mayor Bachhoffner was elected City of Seaside Mayor in November 2010, becoming a regular member of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board of Directors later that same year. And whereas Felix Bachhoffner served with commendable leadership, technological skills, appropriate guile, and community issue sensitivity on the Seaside Planning Commission, multiple Seaside neighborhood programs, and small business advancement efforts prior to being elected as mayor. And during Mayor Bachhoffner's mayoral tenure, he provided focus to and advocated for the dedication of the Fort Ord National Monument and directed attention to Seaside's role as a potential gateway to that public. And whereas Mayor Bachhoffner has actively engaged and supported Monterey Bay regional efforts to produce effective water supply and emphasize the importance of balanced replacement development projects on Seaside's portion of the former Fort Ord, and whereas the Fort Ord Reuse Authority board members have greatly benefited from Mayor Bachhoffner's penchant for technologically advanced meeting management and laptop web browser access to Robert's Rules of Order, and whereas Mayor Bachhoffner maintains support for broad community participation in Seaside and former Fort Ord programs and issues, now therefore be it resolved, for all the reasons described above, but not limited thereto, the Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board of Directors hereby expresses its sincere commendation to Mayor Felix Bachhoffner. Passed and adopted this day, if approved. The first resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution is adopted.
Second resolution is to Dr. Douglas Garrison, It is hereby resolved by the Fort Hood Reuse Authority that whereas Dr. Douglas R. Garrison has provided extraordinary service to the Monterey Regional Educational Community as the president of Monterey Peninsula Community College District since 2006, and whereas under Dr. Garrison's watch, MPC planned for and opened an education center on the former Fort Ord within the city of Marina to serve previously underserved areas in the northern portion of the district. And the center has grown at remarkably fast rates. And under Dr. Garrison's watch, MPC has welcomed increasingly large numbers of minority students previously underserved by the college and is now eligible for the first time to achieve official Hispanic Serving Institution status. And whereas Dr. Garrison advocated for the property cleanup and parcel transfers to enable public safety officer training programs on the former Fort Ord, and whereas while serving as a superintendent president of the Monterey Peninsula Community College District, Dr. Garrison also served as president of the Association of California Community College Administrators, mentoring large numbers of future college leaders through ACCCA. And whereas Dr. Garrison is retiring from the Monterey Peninsula Community College District after serving California's systems for 38 years, now therefore be it resolved for all the reasons described above, but not limited thereto, that the FORA Board of Directors hereby extends its sincere commendation to Dr. Douglas Garrison, and be it further resolved on behalf of the entire FORA family that the Board of Directors extends its deepest gratitude to Dr. Douglas Garrison for his exemplary service to the region. Passed and adopted this day, if approved.
Move approval.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appropriately adopted.
And finally, a third resolution of appreciation to Mayor Dennis Donahue. It is hereby resolved by the Fort Ord Reuse Authority that, whereas Mayor Dennis Donahue was elected City of Salinas Mayor in 2006, becoming a regular member of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority in 2009, and whereas Dennis Donahue served the Monterey Bay region with distinctive leadership, extraordinary discipline, and commendable community sensitivity, both on this, on the Salinas Planning Commission, the Salinas Affirmative Action Commission, the Salinas Police Activity Commission, and the Salinas Citizens General Plan Review Committee prior to being elected as mayor. And whereas Dennis Donahue also served on a number of community or business volunteer groups, several nonprofit boards of directors, and a number of gang prevention program committees. And whereas during Mayor Donahue's tenure as mayor, he provided focused attention to the business and economic needs of the Salinas Valley and recognized the importance of balanced replacement programs at the former Fort Ord. And whereas Mayor Donahue has actively engaged and supported Monterey Bay region educational, community, and military partnerships, advocating for former Fort Ord public safety, effective munitions remediation, collaboration and research business partnerships, and to creation of the California Central Coast Veterans Cemetery. And whereas the Fort Ord board members have greatly benefited from Mayor Donahue's patient, reserved, and demure closed session style, and whereas Mayor Donahue has consistently supported broad community input to regional solutions to the economic, political, socioeconomic, and environmental issues facing the Monterey Bay region. Now therefore be resolved for all the reasons described above, but not limited thereto, the FORA Board of Directors hereby extends its sincere commendation to Mayor Dennis Donahue, and be it further resolved, on behalf of the entire FORA family, the Board of Directors extends its deepest gratitude to Dennis Donahue for his forthright leadership and exemplary service to the Monterey Bay region.
Would we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Dennis, thank you. Job well done. A couple other matters just for the good of the order. First, I want to thank both the public and board members for their understanding of our short staff issues that we've had over the course of the last couple of weeks. Both Robert and Ivana lost family members, and Charlotte, again, is battling a health issue. I know you send her well wishes, but she's in a tough fight. I'd also like to acknowledge Erica Parker here today, representing Mark Stone. I gather Mark is inbound. Well, I just want to welcome him and you, and look forward to spending many Friday afternoons together into the early evening, not the late evening. I believe that is it for announcements and correspondence. Oh, yes. I would note that back with us is Ralph Rubio, Mayor of City of Seaside. Ralph, welcome back. Good to see you again. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a point of order. The resolutions that were read into the record and adopted, did we need to have a motion to put them on the agenda? If
Well,
so,
that
I
was
would
probably
so
a good
move.
idea. Yeah, we probably could have used a motion for an urgency add-on.
Yeah, horse barn, but whatever.
Okay.
Well,
All right. All those in favor of adding it post facto, let's do that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. All right. Brings us to the consent calendar and minutes of November 16th meeting. Are before us board members' concerns with their accuracy? Is there anybody in the public with a concern with these minutes? Bring it back to the board for adoption.
Move for approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you have a problem with the minutes, do come forward.
I'm sorry, Levon Stone, FORA Environmental Justice. I'm still trying to understand, in the closed session, these items were addressed in the closed session, and when do we get the information or find out
I
what it's all
announced,
about or the outcome?
I announced the results of that when we first reconvened. There was no action taken. We simply received a status report.
I understand that, but I mean exactly what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Nothing. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Did we approve the minutes? No, we didn't. So we have a motion. We have a second on the minutes. All those in favor of approval say aye.
Under
Aye.
the question,
Opposed?
I need to abstain, thank you, for the record.
You don't have to, but you can if you'd like.
Yeah.
All right. Please note that Mayor Rubio has abstained. All right, abstained. Okay, moving on then to 7A. 7A is a second vote on the Preston Park capital expenditure budget for the fiscal year 2012-2013. This is a second vote, so closed. Public comment is closed on this item. We'll bring it back to the board. Board members, your preference?
If I may, Mr. Chair, if I may be heard briefly on this.
Okay.
At the last meeting, I made a motion which was voted down relating to the City of Marina having a right to a prior notice of any capital improvement as well as to consent to the same prior to being done. I submitted my points today on this particular matter, and I believe all of the board members have a copy of it. But if I may, there has been a response from the board's legal counsel, which I very briefly would like to go on the record so that we have it on the record. Specifically, it's the counsel for the board's opinion that the City of Marina does not have any right, and he cites Government Code Section 67678, small b 2, as some authority. Well, that particular code section does not apply to this situation. That applies to a transfer of real property to a private use. The appropriate code section is 67678B1, which is the transfer of real property to a city, which, by the way, references the fact there's no cost. Also, in the response from the board's legal counsel, it makes reference to Section 1R and the sale and lease proceeds to be divided based on the minus the direct leasing expenses. Well, if you look at Section 1R, that makes reference to jurisdiction-owned property. The City of Marina, from what I'm told, is not the jurisdiction-owned property, not yet. There's a definition, two definitions in the implementation agreement entered into at the City of Marina. One is for jurisdiction-owned jurisdiction property, which means the property has been transferred to the City of Marina. There's also a definition of the word jurisdiction property, which is property that is within the jurisdiction of the city, but has not been in fact transferred. Section 1R does simply not apply. So it is the position of the City of Marina that we not only have a right to advance notice of any capital improvement, but we also have the right to consent to the same or to refuse to consent to the same.
Okay, we'll let the record duly note that. Thank you, Frank. Okay, Director Edelin?
Mr. Chair, move we take the second vote.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any other discussion?
just a question of clarification. What is the motion that we're voting on? could you phrase it so that we know if we're voting yes or no? Because I can't remember where we ended up
Yes,
last
it's
time.
to approve the fiscal year 2012-2013 Preston Park Housing operating and capital expenditure budgets to include funds for capital improvements with a 3% rate increase.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So let the record note that O'Connell, Parker, and I believe Selfridge voted in opposition. Okay, we now have our second item. That's a second vote. That's the base reassessment plan. Again, just like the last one, this is a second vote, so the public hearing is closed on this item. Bring it back to the board for discussion. Board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I do have a couple of questions because since the last meeting, there have been some changes made to the reassessment plan, and the one that concerns me. So I basically have two questions. One is Table 13 showing the water allocations. Thank you. Was changed again since the last draft, and I will mention that that change was not noted in Appendix D, where all the changes were supposed to be listed, but luckily we caught it because I do have a couple questions about the new numbers. Specifically having to do with the city of Seaside, the numbers were revised so that the 430 acre-feet of water for the Bayonet Black Horse Golf Course was eliminated from the committed water column. So instead of showing that Seaside is in negative numbers when it comes to water, it shows instead a surplus of 226 acre-feet. Now, I know that the water that's being used on the golf course, the potable water, is temporarily being used until the recycled water can be provided. And so I guess my question is what's needed and what's the timeline to get that infrastructure in place?
Michael?
I had not heard this question before, Chair. The City of Seaside's use of the aquifer is temporary. I think it was listed that way from the beginning. I don't know what the schedule is. Much of this anticipated that there would be reclaimed water that would be provided to supplant the need for that. There has been Monterey Regional Water Pollution Control Agency has several different schedules that they've used over time. We've met with them many times about that particular infrastructure process. I don't know if there's a specific listing in the reassessment about their current schedule, but we had not heard a question that the infrastructure schedule was to be included in the reassessment.
I guess I'm asking the question because the water numbers keep moving around, and if we're going to remove the 430 acre-feet from the committed column, it seems to me that we need to know when and how that water's not going to be needed anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I guess, just for the record, I was trying to get an idea. I mean, I know there is some pipeline that is along General Jim Moore Road, mm-hmm. Boulevard, but I guess, my question is, in the meantime, there's potable water being used on Bayonet Black Horse, and which essentially puts Seaside's water numbers in deficit. And so what happens to other projects that Seaside wants to do? And what is the timeline for, getting that conundrum realized or, taken care of?
It seems to me that would be the kind of item that the board would want to discuss in the policy discussion about moving forward, how those things are implemented. But I don't know that that's a flaw in the reassessment report per se.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just for a little bit of information, the amount of water that is being used by the city of Seaside is an amount certain. That was a trade for lands that were traded for the water. That amount certain is about half gone. So if the recycled water doesn't come online, we just stop using the water if we have used up the amount.
Wow, okay, thank you. That seems like an economic impact to Seaside, rather drastic. So, thank you. And so my second question then has to do with some new language on page 6 of Appendix D. My staff did raise this question to staff, but didn't get a professional assessment back about it. The language says, changes to the land use concept come up as an issue because of provisions of the master resolution that allow for the rearrangement of land uses by the jurisdiction, provided an overall density balance is maintained. Well, in looking at the master resolution language, it does allow jurisdictions to trade and transfer intensity of use and density as long as the overall numbers in the base reuse plan remain the same. So it means you can take a low density housing development in one area and make it medium density, and then make another project somewhere else that's medium density and make it low density, so the overall things stay the same. But the language in Appendix D seems to say that jurisdictions can actually change the land use categories, which of like open space, housing, commercial, which is not what the master resolution says. So I guess my question for staff is, do you actually think that jurisdictions can swap land uses around without approval from the FORA board?
There's some language in the master resolution under section 8.02.010 that talks about for legislative land use consistency determinations, the board may disapprove, so it has discretion to disapprove land use decisions for which there is substantial evidence supported by the record that the project would provide a land use designation that allows more intense land uses than the uses permitted in the base reuse plan. So it's the intention of the language was to indicate that there does seem to be some flexibility in the master resolution for situations where with consistency determinations, the jurisdiction has the ability to make some adjustments to where different land uses will occur within the territory that's being subjected to the consistency determination, as long as all the findings can be made with regard to what the master resolution sets out as being the requirements for a consistency determination. So there are other findings that have to be made, but the language in the master resolution does seem to allow some flexibility as long as the other requirements are being met.
And through the chair, and I think you said, you know, the board could approve them, but it means that does have to come to the board for approval.
Yes, for a legislative land use consistency determination, yes.
Great, thank you, thank you. So I would just say that, you know, there's some issues that I have with the reassessment document as it is, but I don't think any errors are necessarily binding on FORA if there's some contradiction. So I'm going to go ahead and support the vote to accept the reassessment report. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Chair?
Chair, I move that we take the second vote to formally receive the final base reuse plan reassessment report.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that item passes. And on the second vote, this moves us on then to new business. We have the proposed schedule for the year 2013 before us. I know there was some discussion about changing the time of the meeting or perhaps the day. But upon discussions by the executive committee and some communications with some of the state and federal legislative presence, it appeared best to leave them at the time we have been meeting at so that those people can be in attendance. I think this last year is probably a pretty good example of why their attendance was important, as we did have significant legislation in Sacramento. Had we not had the presence of Mr. Mining's office here, I don't think they would have had a full understanding of the issues that were going on in this area that were critical to that legislation. And I do have a communication from Sam Farr's Chief of Staff, Rochelle Dornay, that says very simply, Sam likes the Friday afternoon time frame, and Sam did convey that to me himself personally a couple of weeks ago. So that said, are there any questions about the schedule? Jared?
Yeah, Chair, I didn't have a chance to talk to the staff. I believe there's a typo on the 4 board meeting dates. It says December 14th. I believe that should be a December 13th.
Yeah. Duly noted. Anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item? The schedule, be item 8A.
Item 8A, okay. Give me a minute, I'll have to sort through my papers here.
Levon, it's the meeting schedule.
It's about the days that we would meet. It sets the date for each month.
The date and the time, or just the date?
The date.
The date. Okay. And so, you're talking about the third Friday of each month?
Second.
Second Friday of each month, okay? And that's going to come out on a schedule that can go to the public?
It has gone out to the public.
Well, I didn't receive it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the public wishing to speak? Okay, bring it back to board members. Your preference?
Mr. Chair, I think it would be good for, I appreciate the efforts of individual board members and staff, but I think it would be good for the full board to discuss whether we think the Friday afternoon time works. I have concerns about it because in several meetings we've had people who have just left. After a while, it's hard to have the full board present, and certainly coming up in 2013, we have some pretty significant issues related to the base reuse plan that we're going to need to get through. And so I would prefer, if other board members agree, that maybe we do look at an alternate time that would allow people to actually stay through the length of the meeting. Friday afternoons are just tricky because people do have, especially around about 5:30, they're ready to get going on their other plans. So if there are other people who would also like to see us explore other dates, I would request that we do that.
Okay, under discussion. Jerry?
Yeah, just for the benefit of some of the folks in the audience that aren't familiar with some of the political machinations we do up here, each one of the elected officials probably serves on 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 different committees, and each one meets several times a month or once a month or during the weeks. And earlier, I understand many years ago, FORA was looking for a place to put these meetings. Nobody likes being here on Friday. Nobody likes 4.5-hour meetings, and we hate Saturday and Sunday even more. So I mean, it's not like we're masochistic up here and we just love flagellating ourselves. But I would ask the chair if we could have the staff contact all the board members and put up a matrix and just all of our available times during the month for each one of the board members, and we'll just see if anything opens up. If the Hallelujah Chorus comes out and the skies part and there's a time and period there, then maybe we can change the meeting, but I'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts that won't be the case.
So is that a suggestion then to adopt the calendar as proposed, subject to a comparison or an examination of other people, of the members' availability? Right. Okay, so we would be adopting the calendar, and then staff would poll the individual members to see if there was a date that worked. I think it's going to be, I'd agree with you, I think it's going to be pretty difficult to find a date that works for everybody. Bill, are you about to say something?
I was just going to second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All right.
And Mr. Chair, sorry, is it realistic to think that at the first meeting in January, we'd have an answer so that we know if we need to make changes?
Do our best.
Staff certainly can try to do that. The holidays are between now and the first meeting in January, so depending on how calendars are formed, there are several others that are also discussing their calendars for the coming year. So if the timing works and folks are not closed over the week, we can probably get it done.
Thank you.
Okay. Ian?
I'm just going to chime in a little bit. What I thought I heard was to go through and log in the matrix so we could show the public this is the best day and time. So I don't see really anything opening up. So I would like to just go ahead and pass this one. I know the California League of Women Voters did a good job of laying out all the other meetings that we go to, that they know of, and what they did was good work, and I thought the chair answered their concerns, to be honest with you. The priority for me is to have a meeting where the public can attend. It's not really where you want all the board members to be here, but we have, 20-something, close to 30-something different board members, at least 13 that vote. So the majority or the priority for me is to have the public be able to attend, not just to be able to have the board be here. Of course, you can't do anything without a quorum. But it's already conflicts throughout the day, so I don't see it working out. I just thought the chair did a good job of answering their concerns.
Well, and as the motion stands, we would be adopting this calendar if there is, after polling all members, if there is some possibility to find an alternate date, we'd then bring that back for discussion. So, okay, we have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll await your phone call to see what availability exists. Okay, the next item is a simple presentation on the guiding principles and implementing policy options for volume-based reuse plan reassessment that have been put forward. This is an informational item only, and actual action won't occur on it until at the earliest in January sometime. And I believe at least one jurisdiction hasn't adopted these yet. I think that's the City of Monterey, I believe. Okay, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an item that is regarding some guiding principles that have been developed by the jurisdictions. This came about fairly recently. This was an item that came before the admin and executive committees last week. FORA staff was not directly involved in, was actually not involved in formulating the proposed guiding principles that the jurisdictions are presenting. This is an informational item. Staff is not recommending or taking a position on the guiding principles that you have before you today. It's simply an informational item that the admin and executive committees have requested that we bring forward to you today. There are various concepts and suggestions within this document. Sure. There are some various concepts and suggestions within the proposed guiding principles that do fit within the larger discussion of post-reassessment policy action items for board consideration in 2013 and beyond. However, staff would just like to note that these principles have not been thoroughly vetted. They haven't gone through review by staff or legal counsel. Some of the principles, the way the document is currently set up, appear to possibly conflict with existing state law. Basically, the FORA Act regarding voting procedures doesn't currently set forth that only land use jurisdictions may vote on land use related matters. So that's something that would have to be taken up by the FORA board and others possibly. And we would like to make the observation that the guiding principles should not unduly color or direct the board's consideration of post-reassessment policy action items. Really, all policy topics and options in the reassessment report should continue to be up for consideration in the post-reassessment period, because the reassessment report reflects a lot of ideas and suggestions that were brought up in the reassessment process that were obtained from broad-based public participation regarding issues that go beyond and are outside the scope and are broader in scope than the jurisdiction's recommendations. Basically, the jurisdiction's proposed guiding principles, as well as the responses and concerns raised by the Sierra Club and possibly by others in the future, should be basically seen as a factor that the board should consider along with other factors when framing out a post-reassessment work plan in 2013 and beyond. And that, in terms of next steps, framing out a post-reassessment work plan is something that staff has been proposing to explore further in a board retreat or study session or something along those lines in early 2013. So that's basically what we have on this item.
All right, thank you, Darren. When I go out to public first, are members of the public wanting to speak on this item today? And if so, please come forward. State your name for the record. There's a 3-minute limitation on that testimony.
I'm Jane Haynes. I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club. As I came in today, I found out that not all board members received this Sierra Club's letter. We emailed it out at 8 a.m. this morning, and we emailed it to each board member, but apparently it wasn't received, so I want to review it. It's about this particular item. Sierra Club is very concerned about this. First of all, I want to say that Sierra Club agrees with the majority of these principles. In fact, we have made the same comments. Many of these principles are the same as the comments we've been making through this whole reassessment process. However, there are 4 that we believe would make it impossible for the FORA board to implement the base reuse plan. And it was spelled out in the letter. I urge you to read the letter. But at any rate, the principles 2C, 2D, 3B, and 3D. The first one that Darren spoke about only land use jurisdictions, voting on land use matters is in direct conflict with the framework, the basic framework for the base reuse plan. I brought with me the base reuse plan there. That's Sierra Club's copy of it, those 5 volumes, which we've read. And it says in Chapter 1, Volume 1, page 8, says that the framework for the base reuse plan is coordinated land use planning. I quoted it, and it's quoted in the letter. You can see it there. This is in direct conflict to that. So what you're saying is the underlying idea of the whole base reuse plan would not be able to be carried out. Second objection that Sierra Club has is, what was the point of the reuse, of the reassessment? If you're going to say all of these things that we've done so far, we're not going to change. You know, that's what it says, that all these consistency determinations and so on and so forth, we're going to keep them, even though the base reuse plan says, well, the decibel level given for the noise element of the base reuse plan is 5 to 10 decibels lower than in the general plan
30
for
seconds.
the county. Okay, for the county and elsewhere. I urge you to read it. The reassessment report gives you the vision of a community, exactly what this base reuse plan says. You have the university at the center, you have 7 independent communities around it, you have a big open space. Sierra Club fully supports that. It's a beautiful idea. And
3 minutes.
The reassessment says, if the financial experts say that if you will actually fulfill what's in this base reuse plan, you will be able to attract employers of high-paying jobs, that they are seeking a community, such as the one that's described in the base reuse plan. And if you go ahead and you accept these 4 principles that are in here that we object to, the rest of them we think are great, you do that, you're never going to get the space reuse plan implemented, and the vision that reassessment gives you, the plan gives you, the economic success that you can have if you will implement the space reuse plan will be gone forever.
Thank you, Jane. Are there other speakers?
Mr. Chair, a parliamentary inquiry, if I might. We've had in the past couple meetings a verbal 30-second warning. Is that really what we want to do as a board? I know if I were at the podium, I would find it very disruptive to my train of thought. And I would hope that we've got some other way to signal to the speaker their time situation.
I've historically been able to try to keep us on track without the 30-second warning, so I could continue to do that, but I was accused of being dictatorial a few times, but I've grown used to that.
This machine that I, with all my extensive legal education, am tasked with operating, has a light on the front, and I'm told that it turns yellow at the appropriate moment. And so if it's a pleasure, I was instructed to notify people when their 30-second point had been reached, but I'm capable of changing the way I do these things. So if you'd like
Yeah, I'm good at it, Jerry.
so if you'd just like to rely on the light.
Let's try that, and then my...
Through the chair, I agree with Bill, and I think we could just put the light right in the center, and when the speaker sees the light, the chairman and the speaker can work that out.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I agree with Bill.
Fine. Yeah, bring
I
it
hope you're not going to tell me my time
Just
is
don't-
up. I'll just be standing here.
No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Yeah. No, we'll push the reset button and we'll go to the 3. Okay, Ms. Stone, you're on.
Thank you.
Yeah. raised to me. Okay. All right.
I will repeat again that the problem with these documents, and the table is loaded with them, I think I got some 3 or 4 times. The problem with what everybody is doing, the Sierra Club, the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network, the local communities who are being impacted, the problem is that there are these separate venues that are not very understandable at these meetings when we come. And we hear little bits and pieces about them, and they could all be saying the same thing. I don't know, because we are not getting the whole story. We're not getting the same information, and that is worrisome to me. And I don't think that we can achieve what we need to achieve if we keep communicating this way. We need to have a better communication process. If we meet at 3 o'clock on Friday, community members more likely are at work and can't be here. And as representatives of the public, we need to have information that can be given in an understandable manner. The presentations, the information that's given, the average person that sits here can't understand what you're saying. The 10 Ds, the 5 A's, the B, C's, D, X, Y, Z. We need to have a communication process that is understandable by most people and not just PhDs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Are there others wishing to speak today? Okay. Carl, I can't believe you couldn't get up here in an expedient manner. Is this your first public hearing?
I like to come at the end. I've learned from experience.
Thank you, Hans.
Mr. Chair, I'm Carl Holm with the Monterey County Resource Management Agency. I was one of the jurisdictions that participated in this. And the idea is we recognize that the next step is to consider a menu of policy options out of the reassessment report. The staff from the 5 jurisdictions with land in the Fort Ord area affected by the policy decisions coming out of that report thought we would develop a 1-page guide that could potentially help guide the future policy decisions of this board. The guide was presented to our respective jurisdictions for the decision makers to have at their consideration. Those that have taken action generally supported the concept with some variations to specific language, similar to what was said in some of the previous presentations. Those variations haven't been actually represented in what's attached in your staff report. We agree the purpose of all this is to ensure that the 1997 base reuse plan is implemented. And I think that's all of our end goal. But the idea was to put this out here now, knowing that the next step is to start to consider the policy options so that we can start the dialogue. And that's why it's here before you today as an informational item. So we hope that you just accept it, and then we can start having that dialogue next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. My name is Diana Ingersoll. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Seaside. I totally concur with Carl Holmes' statements regarding the guiding principles. I do want to inform you that the City Council of the City of Seaside has not deliberated on this item. It was on the original staff report of their December 6th meeting. However, the lateness of the night and the importance of this document that it be considered by the newly elected council members needed to be done. Therefore, this item is going to be considered by the City Council at their December 20th meeting. Furthermore, we do want to emphasize that it was very monumental that the 5 jurisdictions had gotten together and created this guiding principles. The guiding principles are intended to do exactly that, and that is not to dictate to the board the decisions with regards to the policy, but to provide some sort of principles that they could use as basis of in their deliberation as they move forward in looking at the policies and recommendations for the reassessment document. Furthermore, we really do agree with the Sierra Club's letter, in which in the last sentence they indicated that the reassessment is to ensure that the 1997 base reuse plan does get implemented and is completed. And we truly believe that that part of the guiding principle should be also taken into consideration. And staff will report back to you as to the actions of the City of Seaside City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Is anybody else wishing to speak? Last call. Okay, I'll close public comment period, bring it back to board. Directors? Director Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that when this came to the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, I did vote against the document because there are several of the statements that I have concerns with. The first is 1A, including the word population, that I just don't think it's appropriate to have the replenishment of population be a priority. We need jobs. But if we create 500 jobs and we build houses and recruit 500 or 1,000 people from outside the area to come in and take those jobs, we really haven't achieved anything for our local population. And so I haven't heard any people or organizations clamoring to have more population to take any jobs we might be able to create. So I think that statement is out of place. And then under Category 2, all of them are problematic in that they just fly in the face of what we just represented to the state about the state legislature in our FORA extension legislation. We said to them, extend FORA, we need a regional planning body. But if we want to leave all the decisions to the underlying land use jurisdictions, then what do we need FORA for? So I just think it really looks bad for us to do things this way, and I think it really shows a level of intellectual dishonesty that has really crept into the entire issue of land use planning on the former Fort Ord.
Were there others, Jane? Okay. Is there anybody else wanting to comment at this time? Nicole?
Hi. I just wanted to let you know that Senator Monning was also disappointed when he read this in the agenda, since that was also the first time that we read about this in the agenda. Last legislative session, then Assemblymember Monning worked tirelessly on legislation to extend the sunset date of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority because of his strong support for a regional governance structure. And a lot of the principal guidelines that were put forth in this document by the land use jurisdictions today don't foster that regional governance structure that Senator Monning and others worked so hard for. So even the way it was presented. So disappointed, and would also like to emphasize what Darren said, and I believe Supervisor Parker said, that there are some principles in the document that would also conflict directly with state law. So that is another concern that we have there about adopting something like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to comment? I see a hand, but I can't see what the body is. Ralph?
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been here, but I've been following the discussion. The idea that we could restrict jobs and population to, the locals kind of flies in the face of today's society. Just go look at MontereyJobs.com and see where everybody's coming from. I mean, people pick up a laptop, a computer, and they can access job calls in Arizona, anywhere, and they can decide to move. This is America. We're not going to check your papers when they come on and look for a job. So the fact is that if there is activity, people will come here. They will come, and we can't hold them out. There's no legal way to do that, and I don't think we need to. We need to attract people back to this area that have left. There's been a serious brain drain in this area, and some of those people have been gone for 10, 15 years because there was no opportunity here. So now we're going to tell them they can't come back. I don't think that, well, one thing, it's probably not legal. And as far as the the jurisdictions, what we're saying is we still have our sovereignty in our land use jurisdictions. The ability for FORA to comment on that is in the consistency determination, and that's the same as it always has been. The idea that We can change land use designations are within the purview of any jurisdiction, if whether it's in Fort Ord Reuse Authority proper or in their own cities. So that is not something you're going to take away from the jurisdictions. How we handle it when it gets here is the issue. When we have several people that don't have the same kinds of interests as jurisdictions do, sometimes they don't understand what it is we're trying to accomplish, and their goals are not the same goals as the cities. So that discussion being brought up in the guiding principle is, I think, an appropriate discussion. Whether it ends up that way or another way, this is the opening discussion. We accept the guiding principle as they're stated, and as the gentleman from the county stated, then we begin the discussion on what that's really going to look like in the end. Thank you.
Okay, Victoria?
I just wanted to make a specific comment and then a general comment. The specific comment is just on the principles in particular that, as a representative of the city of Carmel, I think it would be difficult to support something where land use jurisdictions narrowly vote on land use matters for this, and it just basically echoes the comments that have been made already about the appropriateness of a regional planning effort. But the more general comment is really a step backward to a much more 30,000-foot view of this process, which is that I know that I'm not here very often as an alternate, but I think it's maybe from that vantage point that I see how difficult this process has become for a lot of very well-meaning people. And it seems to me that if a set of principles like this, which are already obviously disputable, could come at this moment in time, that what it reveals is, again, a very flawed process that has developed. It seems to me that in my business, which is, I'm an architect and have planning experience, there's a tool available to us that could possibly unlock a lot of the conflict and, in fact, streamline what has become an incredibly long and arduous process toward implementation of anything, whether it's the 97 plan or anything else. And that is, and I know a lot of people in the room are familiar with this, so I don't want to over-explain, but some people may not be familiar, and it's just simply a very well-run public charrette process. You can use that for land use planning. You can also use it for general goal planning. But in this case, land use planning is general goal planning for this particular type of body and this particular subject matter. So though it takes effort and it takes expertise and it takes some time, it takes a lot less time than conflict and lawsuits and all sorts of things that we're already seeing the shimmerings of, even with today's discussion. So I just put that on the table. It's obviously not an action item or anything. It's not on the agenda, but it's a comment, it's an observation. If it's done right, the way it's done all over the world, but there are people who do this to the point where it almost guarantees streamline. And it seems to me that even if it was done at the beginning of this process, which I wasn't around for, I think I was in grad school, that it needs the time is now to have it be done again.
Okay, and I think staff can take that as possible direction and come back when we come back in January and talk about what that format might look like if it seems feasible.
Thank you.
It's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, Jerry?
You know, all I can do is speak about the specific, at least in my own city, Delray Oaks, how this came about. I guess some of the city managers got together and officials for the other land use jurisdictions, and there's a feeling, a stronger and stronger feeling, in my city and probably some of the other cities, that there's a significant element that wants to stop all development on Fort Ord. They want to stop all water. They want to stop all development. Mostly the folks that are doing this are non-land use jurisdictions. So this is really a result of an emotional reaction of coming up with some guiding principles. It has no legal jurisdiction whatsoever over FORA. It's basically from the city of Delray Oaks, a feeling of my city council that, look, If we want to develop something on Delray Oaks, the land use jurisdiction, the citizens of Delray Oaks are going to come together and put together what they would feel is a sustainable, low-density project to develop a revenue stream to make our city a better place to live. We're the ones, and our citizens are the ones that are going to do that. And of course, we're going to come to FORA for a consistency determination with the base reuse plan. That's where this FORA board comes into it. But the bottom line is, for the land use jurisdictions, this, at least from my own city's perspective, is our citizens will decide what Delray Oaks will do. We'll not have something thrown down our throats by folks that have nothing to do with our overall land use. Again, there is a consistency determination with regard to FORA. We have to be with regard to the base reuse plan, and we will do that. We'll be good neighbors. But at least that's where we stand right now. This may amount to something. We may amount to absolutely nothing whatsoever next year. We'll see how far we want to go, but at least my 2 cents.
Okay, Mr. Kemp. Bill?
Thank you, Chair Potter. I would like to share an additional perspective from one of the agencies that wasn't listed on the core list, if I might. I'm from the city of Pacific Grove. At first, as I read this agenda item, I felt very wounded because we're not listed. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we've been left out. And that lasted for about 2 seconds, and then I did a little happy dance, thinking, boy, this could be really good, because I've got to tell you, some of the most painful parts of my month are the discussions we have here trying to work through a very, very complex issue. Then the next thing that went through my mind is, how is it that 9 votes out of 13 have come together to discuss and propose this particular item, and the rest of the board didn't know about it? And I was kind of wondering, where's the Brown Act in this process? But at least it's here now, and we'll have that discussion moving forward. I really echo the feeling that was expressed by Mrs. Haynes that we need regionally a coordinated approach to at least significant parts of the development of the former corridor. That was the premise of the base reuse plan as it was originated. It's interesting that there's an item later on the agenda that actually illustrates it very nicely. It's close to the freeway, and there are freeway setbacks that were regional issues, not simply marina issues, because it's a quality of life factor for all of us, not just for a single city. That document on the consistency determination also talks about land use decisions, which strike me the ones that we ought to have a lot of involvement on, versus development entitlements, which may be very, very specific to the city where they occur. And I don't think many of us want to get involved in development entitlement decisions within the context of the base reuse plan. So I think there are actually some things that are definitely worth talking about in here, but there are a couple things where the premise may or may not really service according to what I think is the original intent, and still an important intent for the reason for having FORA. Specifically, I do support the idea that the economy has to be a factor. I believe that we also recognize in this process that we have constraints, and they have to have a place to be discussed for the appropriate adjustments that we're going to need. There were some questions about whether we should do all of the capital improvement plan by the end of FORA, or whether there ought to be a different timeline. But I can tell you from, certainly from my point of view, and I think my city's point of view, there are things like regional resources of the Fort Ord National Monument, the Veterans Cemetery, and some other things where we feel we have as much an interest as the people who live relatively next door. So I would hope that as we proceed in this discussion, we can consider those factors as well. Thank you very much, Chair Potter.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, anybody else? This is a receipt of report. If we had a motion to receive the report, if there's any additional discussion, we could frame it around that motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second.
On
Additional
a
discussion. Ian.
On a second, I'll try to be brief, I guess. I know everybody wants to go home. This is just amazing to me. You know, amazing. We didn't have all this argument when the Sierra Club or Land Watch, anyone else, tried to give us their guiding principles. But when the land use jurisdictions come up with some guiding principles, all of a sudden they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. And what they're trying to do is probably protect their voters' interests. their citizens' interests. So you guys have to remember that. That's the real initial land use plan, to put back what they lost. And I think it's important that we sit here as a regional body, but we are pushing back. And I don't think anybody got together and violated the Brown Act. Let me be clear about that. Or I wasn't a part of that. So that didn't happen. But let me just give you an example of what we're talking about. For example, and this is what the Sierra Club put out in their little memo. It says, does this mean, for example, that only Seaside would be allowed to determine whether or not a Seaside project would be compatible with the educational mission of nearby CSUMB, significant parts of which are located in Marina and the county? Now Seaside is supposed to be concerned to make sure we don't impact the college's mission, even if that means we cannot bring any new tax revenue in. I don't think my citizens are in agreement with that, and they love CSUMB, but I'm giving you an example of what we're being told. So I take offense with people saying we should make that priority. We don't have any say of what is built or what goes on CSUMB college property. They have sovereignty. But now we're supposed to be able to be told what we should build across the street from that property and have our citizens eat the tax dollars that they don't create from that. So I don't think no one said you're supposed to take all these principles and we adopt them all. But to say the cities shouldn't have came up with some, that says a lot about what you're saying. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Ochoa.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel compelled to respond.
So you got poked.
I do have some concerns about these principles, but they don't. I guess the concern I have is not so much about the specifics. I haven't really researched whether any one of these principles is in fact incompatible with state law or any technical aspects. But I guess the mindset and the framework, conceptual framework underlying it is the part that concerns me, and that is that implicit here is the notion that not only are our land use jurisdictions autonomous from a governance standpoint, but that somehow their fates are independent, and that one does not affect the other. And I think that really sort of misses the guiding vision of FORA, which is that in order for our communities to move forward together, it was important to have a mechanism that allowed for us to reach consensus on a common ground and a common future. I think that's the sort of the qualitative aspect behind it, the mindset of these principles that I think concerns people. It certainly concerns us, because I think that this region has a great potential, and we have tremendous assets here. And if we work together and we collaborate to find those things that unite us and the interests we share in common, that can set up a very useful framework for then each individual jurisdiction to advance its own interests, mindful of how that fits into the larger common interest. And I think that we can start focusing on identifying win-win solutions rather than win-lose solutions, or solutions that are sitting alongside each other, independent, and failing to capture synergies that go untapped.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this brings us to the public comment period of today's agenda. It's an opportunity for any member of the public to talk on a Fort-Ord-related use item that is not on today's agenda. There's a 3-minute limitation on that testimony. If you'd state your name for the record, it would be appreciated.
Michael Groves, president of EMC Planning Group. I know that the board passed a resolution earlier for Mayor Donahue, but I just want to acknowledge Mayor Donahue and let the board and in front of everybody say what a great heart this man has, what great passion he has for our community. And I really want to thank him for everything he's done for our community in making it a better community. So thank you, Dennis.
Well said. There, here. Okay, others in the public wishing to speak today?
Denise Turley from Marina. Hi, Dave. Second meeting this week. So, not everyone in here might know, but there was yet another school shooting today. Unfortunately, at an elementary school, and unfortunately, a high death toll. And I would just like to remind FORA that as we close this year, back at the beginning of the year, I asked several different times in several different meetings about an anti-bullying process amendment here, some discussion on that, and I have not heard anything back. I want to ask if there is in fact a landline here, if cell phone coverage was out. Is there a landline process here so that if a shooter came in this building, we could call the police? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. With my remaining time, and you'll have to tell me whether this is legal or not, I find it absolutely outrageous to not give me, as a tenant of Preston Park, a chance to get up and say anything just because it was a second vote, because there are different people here in the room. There are people that voted that weren't here last time and heard my comments. I'm just absolutely outraged by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others wishing to speak today?
Levon Stone, Fort Worth Environmental Justice Network. First of all, I want to say it's just too bad that we're in a situation in our country where children have to die, and we can't bring those babies back. But it should remind us that we are all responsible for everything that happens to each one of us. And what I wanted to say was, hundreds of people lost their job at Fort Ord. This was a federal base closure process. And I'm here to remind any mayor, city council person, supervisor, anybody that's been elected to represent their communities and their public, that that is the first order of business. We are servants to our communities. We are not the big shots that make all decisions. Our decisions come from those that we represent. And I have not been hearing a lot of that. I have heard some, and I thank you so much. But we are under what you call, or should be, the BRAC base reuse plan, the recovery process, the mellow bill, the downsizing of hundreds of people who lost their jobs and their way of life, the families who were destructive. We should have a process. And thank you, Supervisor Parker. We should have a local hiring process for those people, which are long, long overdue. We are not just an open community for those who are more well-to-do. And I hope that next month I'll be able to bring some of that in front of you so that we can see what should be taking place. But I just encourage you to think about the people out there in the food lines, the people out there in the homeless line, the people out there who have to take handouts and feel less than a human being. We're at this time in our country that we need to get past this kind, accepting this kind of activity, and especially when it had nothing to do with those people themselves. So, all the security in the world will not prevent people from doing mean things, because mean things have been done to a lot of people that just can't seem to understand why we separate ourselves from each other. Animals don't even do that, and we shouldn't do it either. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Are there others wishing to speak today? Okay, I see no one. Close the public comment period. Bring us to the executive officer's report. Michael?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was slowing.
walking up.
Yes, you are.
Mr. Chair, board members and staff, my name is Carlos Ramos, and as a participating member of the Coalition for Jobs, Opportunity, and Business in Seaside, C-Jobs, I would like to congratulate our new board member, newly elected mayor, former mayor, Ralph Rubio. It is a pleasure to see you here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And the new mayor pro tem, re-elected council member Ian Oglesby. Your passion, your commitment, and your vision has been something that has, quite frankly, encouraged C-Jobs to move forward. It's very complex to do what you do. Many people don't understand. It's very easy to be here at the mic, to throw stones, cast words, sometimes very, very hurtful, because they have not sat at your seat. Whether you're an executive officer, whether you're a member or representative, it's very difficult. But there is a need that has been continuously voiced, and it's the kind of representation that we see from our mayor, historically and now currently into the future, and obviously our mayor pro tem out of Seaside, that will continuously be looking for what is important to those individuals that have been impacted by the closure of the old Fort Ord. And to you, Mr. Chair, congratulations. It is good to see you here, to continue the good fight, because you have served our community exceptionally well. So on behalf of C-Jobs, congratulations to you, Bill, and all those that were reelected. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to speak today? Okay, close the public comment period. Michael, Executive Officer's report.
Yes, Chair Potter, members of the board, item 10A is an information item, and I don't have anything to add. It is fairly clear and straightforward. Item 10B is an information item that includes the minutes from the Administrative Committee meeting. And then item 10C transmits to the board the correspondence that have been submitted to the board and reminds the public that there is a way to communicate directly with the FORA board. Those items I would ask that they be received by the board.
Are there any objections to receipt? I would note, though, that the newly sworn-in Assemblymember Stone has snuck in and is now seated in lieu of Erica. Mark, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I know we all look forward to working with you as we move forward things that matter legislatively. You know, you were very active in my district, in the greater area of Monterey County as you ran. And I would say as a candidate, I saw more of you than I had of any other candidate except somebody who actually lived right in the middle of the 5th District. So it's great to have you here. If you'd like to make a comment, we'd certainly be delighted to hear from you. On the other hand, if you...
Thank you. I do apologize for being late. We'll get our schedules worked out. I look forward to being able to serve and represent the 29th Assembly District for everyone here. And just on a slightly different note, apologize since I just arrived here, but there was a great tragedy in Connecticut today, and as over the past number of hours, I've been hearing more and more about a movement nationwide asking folks to turn their holiday lights off tonight out of respect for the families for whom their children will not be returning. That's been hopefully getting out there by social media and all. I think all of us in government, those of us who work hard for our communities, should be struck hard by the death of so many young children in the school. So it's a sad day, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, no objections to receipt of items 10A through D. That moves us on then to consistency determination for the Veterans Affairs Health Clinic.
Conservation.
Go right, whatever.
It is particularly apropos that Assemblymember Stone is here. We are working feverishly to get our habitat conservation plan approved. Item 10D gives you some information on the status of that work. There remains a struggle that we have with our colleagues. Two different agencies of the state of California are working through an issue that they have between them. The California Department of Fish and Game and California State Parks for years have struggled with the idea that state parks has habitat conservation plan obligations, and oftentimes the Department of Fish and Game would like them to deploy those with a conservation easement. That has been a struggle for us for 3 or 4 years to get agreement between the two agencies, and the unique circumstances they are that they both report to the same agency head, who was a prior resident of the seat that Assemblymember Stone currently sits in. So we will be working with Assemblymember Stone's office, and we have been working with Senator Monning's office on this crucial issue for moving ahead with a base-wide adoption of habitat so that all of the habitat at the former Fort Ord that's been designated can be protected in perpetuity. So this is what the item is. I know board members have asked how quickly we can move this along. In fact, I know two board members asked me this week because members of the public have asked them about how quickly can we get the habitat conservation plan in place. Mayor Donahue in particular. Chair, that's just my report on the HCP.
All right. Any questions?
Thank you for the update. So from what you said, is it logical to extrapolate that this line about however a legal review from these wildlife agencies is not yet complete refers to this interdepartmental disagreement, and that once they can reach resolution that that legal review will be able to move along more quickly, or are those unrelated?
There are a few more items that I think the legal folks are looking at. They're specifically interested about how the assurances of establishing the endowment will be deployed, how FORA and future jurisdictions will maintain the obligation for the endowment. I think there's some questions that still remain on a couple of the technical elements about how certain species are protected, but by and large, most of those technical issues are resolved. And then this whole conservation easement concept is the one that's getting most of the attention, but there's also a question from California Department of Fish and Game about the assurances fund for the Bureau of Land Management property. There's also some questions about long-term how those lands that will become the national monument are maintained for protecting habitat. So if you'd like more details anytime, we can provide any board member with, if you want the 6-inch, 3-inch binder, that's fine, but we can also give you a crib notes version if you'd like.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could. I would like to comment. Coming to the end of six years in office, and I've signed a lot of whereases. I've never actually seen a whereas that's really not true. Whereas the 4 board members have greatly benefited from Mayor Donahue's patient, reserved, and demure closed session style. That's actually not true, and I actually believe Supervisor Potter knew that when he signed it. And I think the executive director was in on the deal. And I want to congratulate the assembly member. And the thing I was struck about this, and being concerned about habitat management is not at all my perceived MO. But the notion for years that 2 agencies who report to the same folks, it's absurd. And I hope you will be an action hero and take it upon yourself to get that resolved, because I think what folks deserve, because very candidly, and none of us who are sitting up here are naive, some of the disagreements are not disagreements, they're just simply tactical, and I agree with my colleague from Delray Oaks. Some of us know what's going on some stuff, but some stuff does get caught up. And I think it's enormously frustrating, regardless of what side anybody is on any issue, that we can't get to the question. And so so I did talk to the executive director on this particular issue because I happened to have a conversation with somebody that I probably would not agree with on most things, but what I do agree is there should be an answer. And so, and I do appreciate the importance and passion and concern about this particular issue. And to Supervisor Parker's point, and I think it's well taken, FORA ought not take the hit because it's busy fighting through kind of the underbrush right now on things that are not necessarily FORA issues for things. I mean, we're all big kids and we can deal with it, but I just think that it would be terrific that is you took over, that if you could make some progress. I think everybody who takes the time to come or sits on this board would like to see that as potentially a little bit of a sea change, that it'll be a new order. You know, my one thought as I leave this body is, you know, this is land use and this is about regional stuff, but it's a deeper thing. This is really the place where swords got turned into plowshares. Relatively important, I think, in the big scheme of things. I don't think it's too much to ask that regardless of how we feel about stuff, we cut to the chase. So I would ask, because I happen to know the person this is particularly important to her, and today as I left office, one of the things that I thought about, the macro's easy, but in the end, behind a lot of the stuff who put us in these chairs is a person or an individual with a passion or a cause. They deserve our best efforts, and I think we ought to show a little impatience about that stuff. So with that, on behalf of some folks who aren't here tonight, I'd ask that you tee that up. I would ask the public to keep a better eye on folks who sign these resolutions. Not all whereases are, in fact, actually real whereases. So,
Duly noted.
yes.
Thank you,
And
Dennis.
is Mayor Donahue saying that we didn't benefit from his reserved manner? We apologize for not really seizing that opportunity.
Well, I was really more talking about patient, reserved, and demure.
Yeah. All right. Unless
And
there's-
Chair, if I just make a brief comment, I'm very happy to look into this. I've done, as a county supervisor, quite a bit of work with HCPs, and often the fights are between state agencies and the federal agencies, so this is a little newer for me, but I'm very much happy to weigh in. I would hope that state agencies, sister agencies, would be closer to being, it's not always true, I understand, but closer to being on the same page. So I'm happy to do what I can.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I would ask that we provide Assemblymember Stone with the appropriate armor and tools to accomplish that task. We've thrown several assemblymen into that fray, and to no avail. So we'll do the best we can to equip you for that fight.
All right, unless there's any other comments, we can deem these reports received without exception and then move on to 10E. Michael?
Yes, Chair Potter, this is a development entitlement consistency determination from the city of Marina. Typically, these are items that are concurred at the staff level when the consistency determination by the jurisdiction meets the requirements of the master resolution. At staff level, we had a full review. We've had an administrative committee review as well. There were no objections at any level that we've received so far, and no member of the board expressed any concern. So when that is the case, the board simply receives the report, and it is deemed consistent, unless there's a request by a board member for an appeal.
Is there such a request? I don't see one. Then we're consistent.
I know that Doug Yount would have been here to help present this today, but I understand his wife had emergency surgery this afternoon at Stanford, and so he's not able to be here. I know Teresa Sismanis is in the event that there would be a question from the board members. So, Chair, that would resolve this issue.
Excellent, and I think we all look forward to the actual commencement of construction on this project. Much needed, good, solid community effort. A little difficult to find a site for a while, but this is of great, great value to the community as a whole, and especially to our much valued veterans. So we appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a quick comment
Absolutely.
in support of the clinic. It's valuable, obviously, to the people who will be using it, the veterans who don't have to drive long distances to get the medical care that they need. I also just really appreciate that it's the kind of mixed-use development that we know really works well, and so really adding the clinic to the commercial and restaurant and all the other uses there. I just think it's a really great fit and will be a real benefit to our communities as well as the people that they're directly serving.
Excellent. Are there any other comments, items from members today? Jerry?
Since it's our last opportunity, I thought it'd be appropriate to see if Mayor Donahue has any final report, final departure comments for the board.
Briefly.
Well, whereas, no, I think, you know, I think any comments that I might have really pale into what the Assembly member asked us to all think about. I know as I began my farewell comments to Salinas this morning, it was most certainly on everybody's mind. I think those incidents, that's what caused me. I actually do think about FORA a little bit, and it caused me to really kind of reevaluate this work within the context of sword into plowshares. And you know, the thing I always tell veterans is I never served, so I want to honor your service by making sure I'm the best possible public servant that I can be. And I have no hesitancy in telling people, regardless of how we line up on most issues, that has really been pretty much my observation every step of the way, that the folks who ring this table, they are public servants in every sense of the word. And I think Carlos Ramos' comments are well taken. But, you know, in light of what happened today, perhaps seeing our work in a different light, in honor of trying to make sure we work towards more peaceful communities where those sorts of things can't happen again. I like the sword into plowshares imagery. I think Dr. Ochoa really summed it up well. You know, at the end of the day, we have to fight to be together, and when we are together, we can move forward. And I know certainly my comments to Salinas today were that I know I'm a little bit of a Salinas chauvinist at times, but the reality is I think it is our destiny to be the capital city of an emerging Central Coast corridor, and that means we're all together. And my comments to my successor, who will sit here and take my place, is Salinas needs to engage in FORA more seriously, because what happened, the swords into plowshare imagery, again, it affected all of us, so we have to be together. And I think I kind of came here by default because the other council members didn't want to be here on Friday night. So I said, yeah, I will. And I leave understanding that it is a terribly important body for the entire region, and I am quite confident my successor understands all in by Salinas. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you for your service. Okay, unless there's anything else for the good of the order, we do stand in adjournment today in memory of the 28 victims of today's tragic shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut. Our prayers and our thoughts are with those family members as they try to deal with this tragic event. So thank you all for coming.
Mayor, go get him.